Welcome to the opposition preview. As we look ahead to the Wolves game, I'm joined by Dave from Talking Wolves. But before we do jump into the video, quick shout out to our sponsors, manscaped.com. Head over to Manscaped and write the code BOTN to get 20% off plus free shipping. Dave, it hasn't been a while. It's been a while since I've actually done an opposition preview. Last time we've done it was probably about 2 months ago. You messaged me and I thought, why not? Let me return it back. And it's an interesting game. I'm looking forward to it. But before we talk about the game in particular, your season so far, we both changed managers at the start of the season. Bruno Lage currently sitting 8th after 26 games. Pretty solid, if you ask it from a neutral perspective. But as a Wolves fan, what have you made of it?
It's been all right, man. I mean, if you asked me this question this time last week, I think I would have been in a much better mood. But it's been very solid. There's been, defensively, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It's been phenomenal. I think, as far as I'm aware, we've still got the second strongest defense in the league, which is great. But then the other end of the field, attacking wise, we're probably one of the weakest teams down in the bottom 3-4 teams in the league, which is a bit frustrating. So, which is a shame, really, when you look at the players that we've got in that attacking area. It's I still can't quite put my finger on why we're so goal shy at the moment. But solid, for a manager that hasn't been hugely backed in his first 2 transfer windows in charge of the club. He's sent many messages out to the board. Many times, I'm sure he's had a slapped wrist by the board as well. But he's doing okay. With a group of players that aren't really his own at the moment. He's done a good job. And if you told any Wolves fan, you'd probably be sat in 8th place at this stage of the season. I'm sure we would have all taken it.
So let's talk about stats. Because stats, not everyone is a fan of it. Sometimes the eye test matters as well. But interestingly, I heard about this stat and I thought I'll check it out myself. So far this season, correct me if I'm wrong, how many goals have you conceded? 24 in the league? Is that correct?
20. We scored 24, conceded 21.
Or 21 goals. All right.
Yeah.
So this stat, so we talk about expected goals against. The expected goals against is the stat that I want to look into because you've only conceded 21 so far, but the expected goals against is 34. So you're doing much better than you should do. So first question is, what on earth is going on? How comes you're not conceding these goals? Are you getting tremendously lucky? Is it Jose Zaha? Is he saving you guys literally? And second of all, do you think a potential bubble may burst sooner rather than later? Because them stats it's not really convincing when you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big reasons is Jose Zaha. I think he's been phenomenal. We signed him up for, I think, about £7 million from Olympiacos. And at the time, a lot of fans weren't too sure about his signing because obviously we had Rui Patricio, who was number 1 at Portugal, gone to Roma, and we've replaced him with Jose Zaha, somebody who at the time could not get into the Portugal squad. But he's come in and he's been phenomenal. Arguably, you look at his save percentages and shot save per minute and stuff like that. And he's one of the best in the Premier League and not just the Premier League, in Europe as well. So I think that's probably a huge reason to why our sort of goals, actual goals conceded to, expected goals conceded is so different. But the defense has been solid. We've been, Max Kilman, Connor Cody, Romain Saiss has pretty much been the back 3 for Wolves. Nelson Semedo and Ryan Aït-Nouri, the wing-backs, have tightened up a lot defensively as well. So I think that's helped. But the last couple of games have been a little bit more shaky defensively. So you say the bubble may burst. I hope not, but who knows? I'm just hoping, we've got maybe 12-ish games left in our season. I'm hoping that we could just keep tight. Until last week, I think we had at one point we had the best defense in the league. I'm just looking at it now over the last couple of games. Chelsea, Liverpool, and City have overtaken us, but I suppose it's still pretty good company to be in and around defensively. But we just got to start scoring more goals.
So looking at the eye test, are you not worried? Because I don't watch Wolves week in, week out.
Yeah.
So by the eye test, is it not as worrying as the stat suggests? Because 21 goals conceded, expected 34. That's quite a good amount of goals that conceded that. Apparently, you might have been only 1 point above Palace, which would have been 31 points. So does the eye test show something different to what the stats show?
I don't particular. I think Jose Zaha there's been a couple of fantastic saves, and he probably pulls off one fantastic save a game roughly, which probably then equates to sort of that huge difference. But I don't know really. It's not as if I'm coming out of games or doing a review and thinking I'm not sure how we haven't conceded 2 or 3 goals there. I don't think I've ever thought that throughout this season, to be honest. I think the games like the City game, the Liverpool game, I'm sure the XG in those games probably would have been, we only conceded 1 in each of those games. A Chelsea game, we drew 0-0. I think they had 2 or 3 golden opportunities as well. So there are games where we're defending well, but I think Jose Sarr is a huge reason for that. He makes 1 or 2 really good saves each game, which probably equates to that. So as long as he's still on his A game, we're going to be okay. But if he has a little dip in form, I think we're in trouble.
So talking about your recent games, so I watched a bit of the Arsenal game. It seemed like after you scored that goal, you just wanted to sit back and take the lead. We'll talk about that in just a second. But your most recent game was against West Ham, a 1-0 defeat. How would you sum up that game for those who haven't watched it?
Very disappointing. We obviously had that game against Arsenal on Thursday, and on Sunday, Bruno Lage has gone into it. I think off the top of my head, we made 5 changes, which is very unlike Wolves.
Yeah.
Ever since we've been back in the Premier League under Nuno, the changes have been very minimal, including obviously the amount of players that we use throughout the season. So to see 5 changes at once is quite a shock. So we were very poor, to be honest. It was one of our worst performances of the season, I'd say. We just couldn't keep hold of the ball going forward. We really struggled. Obviously, young Fabio Silva started up front, and I thought he had a good game, but he just had no support in and around him. Defensively, we just looked so shaky. So that was a real disappointment. And there was a chance there for 3 or 4 players that don't play often to maybe sort of prove a point to Bruno Lage. And I don't think any of them took it, to be honest. So I don't think West Ham was spectacular, but it's frustrating because they were within touching distance. If we beat them on Sunday, we would have overtaken them in the league, and we'd probably be having a completely different discussion now about what I think of the season. But Arsenal game as well. We played Arsenal only a couple of weeks ago due to the postponed fixtures. We had 2 games in 2 weeks against them. They beat us narrowly at Molineux, made a bit of a fuss about it. So there was a bit more bite going into this game. And we took a really early lead. So, I think our approach was, I wasn't expecting us to carry on going all out attack, because against Arsenal, it's not going to work. But I think we were far too negative for the rest of the game. And unfortunately, obviously conceded 2 late goals, which again was a real kick in the teeth, because Arsenal were in touching distance. A win there, we would have overtaken them as well. So 2 games there where fairly narrow margins. I'm not going to say, both the West Ham and Arsenal game could have gone completely different. And we would have been 6 points better off. We would be talking about us being 1 point outside the top 4 right now, which would be mental.
Yeah, exactly. You're talking. The reason why I got a smile on my face is because you're talking about one of your worst performances of the season, and we're coming off as well one of our worst performances of the season against. So I'm just thinking about the weekend. What type of game are we expecting? It can either go 2 ways. It can either continue in that fashion, or both sets of players and managers will have a point to prove and just want that bounce back immediately. Yeah. So let's see what happens on the weekend, because against Stoke, in honesty, it was horrible. But because it's a cup game, you get away with it because you progress to the next round. And that's what that matters. But if it was a league game right now, I'm extremely worried going into the game. But you mentioned your goalkeeper there, Jose Sarr. But going into this game, which players do you pick out to be the danger men that we need to watch out for? Who's on form right now at Wolves?
I would say probably the winger that I'm expecting to start for sure, depending on the way Bruno Lage sets up. But I think Daniel Podence will be reintroduced. He missed out on the West Ham. He didn't start in the West Ham game. He started on the bench, but he's had a really decent season, been much more consistent. I think outside the top 6, he's created the most chances out of any other player in the league. But he's sort of just needs to start getting a few more goal contributions, whether that's setting up players a little bit more or putting the ball in the back of the net himself. So I think Daniel Podence is definitely one to look out for. Hwang Ki-chan's just come back from injury. Obviously, he scored against Arsenal. He looks quite threatening, but I'm still not 100% convinced by him. He missed a good chance against West Ham, and his overall play, I think, he still needs to improve on that a lot more. And then Neves as well. He wasn't fantastic against West Ham, but he just makes things tick. He's very, very good in the middle of the park. But there are many players in our team right now, the likes of Raul Jimenez. We need more of him. He's obviously come back from a bad injury. Started off the season quite well. But the last couple of games, the Arsenal game in particular, a lot of Wolves fans started to comment negatively about his performances. Missed out on the West Ham starting 11. So I'm hoping he's going to be fresh. He's going to come back into this game against Palace, and I think it'll do him a world of good if he can find the back of the net.
What about Palace side of things? As a neutral, who are you most worried about? Because it always used to be Wilfried Zaha, Wilfried Zaha, Wilfried Zaha every single time. Whoever
Yeah,
you speak to, that's it. But right now, has that changed? Is it still just Zaha that you're worried about?
I think Zaha is obviously the danger man. I think I can't quite remember so much recently, but I remember when we were both in the championship many years ago. I think he turned up and scored 2 or 3 goals against us on a midweek, and ever since then, I think he's a good player. You know, I think his attitude can have question marks over it. Everyone knows that, but as a player, you can't deny how good he is. So Zaha's always a danger man. But I think, you know, we spoke a lot about him on the other preview we did on our channel. Elise is a player that, you know, I've had an eye on, or I've been aware of him since his championship days. But it sounds like from what you were saying, he's really flourished in the Premier League so far. So he's another one that's going to be interesting to see how he gets on against our boys on Saturday.
Yeah. And then finally, just your thoughts on Palace so far, and then we're going to move on to the question that is, as you said on your channel, it's one of the hardest questions to answer when you're doing this show. Just your thoughts on Palace so far.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the table, sort of mid-table, but like I said to you before, you know, you're drawing a lot of games, and it's those fine margins. You know, even if you turned 1 or 2 of those draws into wins, you know, you're looking at a slightly better position. And I think it's a really good platform for Vieira to work off. You know, it's a transitional season for you guys. Signed a lot of new players, new manager. And I think if he has a really good summer, this, you know, keeps hold of the decent players, brings in 1 or 2 more that sort of suits his system and that he likes the look of. Next season, I don't think it would be ridiculous for Palace fans to start looking at potentially knocking on the door for Europe. I think, you know, he set that platform there for you. Got some top young players who have now will have a year's experience in the Premier League, and who knows, man? There's plenty of teams in and around there. You know, ourselves, West Ham. I don't think teams like Palace shouldn't be out of the conversation.
Yeah, look, all Palace fans now love you officially, because
Yeah,
that's what we needed to hear. That's what we
Yeah.
needed to hear. Next season, hopefully, we do go and push on, because I honestly feel like we can if everything falls into place. Which in football, it's not as straightforward as that. And another thing is score predictions, which you'll
No.
predict 1-0 win, and then all of a sudden you might lose 3-0. How do you see this game going as a Wolves fan? You're at home. We beat you at home, which, in honesty, it was actually very comfortable for us when we did face you last time around. But are you expecting something different?
I hope so. I hope we get obviously a reaction from Sunday's game against West Ham. But I hope obviously for us, like, you know, we can, you know, we had a really poor performance against you at Selhurst Park, so I'm hoping we can bounce back from that as well. Just looking at the table and obviously, you know, the stats, you guys have scored a lot more goals than us. But we you know, we're conceding very few. So it could be. I'm hoping it's not, but it could be a very boring game. But I think it's going to be very, very close as well. So my head is probably going for, and I know you said the same, my head is probably going for a 1-1 draw, which I don't think I don't know if I'd take it or not. Obviously, only because this time last week we were in such a good position knocking on the door for Europe. And now all of a sudden we're sort of sliding away. And I think dropping points again for Wolves fans would frustrate us. But against the Palace team, who are proving fairly difficult to beat, I think a 1-1 result would be half decent.
In a way, I feel like this game is more important to you guys than us, because we've at least got something to play for. You still got a quarterfinals, and realistically, we're not going to finish in top 7, top 8. That's moving away from us, and we're not going to get relegated as well. So in the league, it's mid-table. It's mid-table.
Yeah.
It's pretty much near enough there, unless something goes drastically wrong. But for you guys, in terms of finishing European spots, you need to pick up these points. So I guess mentally, your players should be way more up for it than us, even though that shouldn't be an excuse for Palace players.
They want to win. Yeah, we're in a position now, like you said, we're out of the FA Cup. Our focuses should just be on, you know, pushing as high as we can in the league. And teams have got a bit of a cushion on us now with Arsenal and West Ham beating us. So we've got to try and, you know, we've got a spell of fixtures now against teams that are in the bottom half of the table that we've got to try and make the most of. But again, we said earlier on, it's not as straightforward as that. So who knows? But I think it's going to be a tough game. That's why I said 1-1.
Yeah. Look, thank you, Dave, for coming onto the channel.
My pleasure,
Always
man.
appreciate talking to you. Make sure to check out the Talking Wolves, where I'm also on Dave's channel talking about the game from a Palace perspective. Let us know in the comment section down below your score predictions and thoughts ahead of the game, any lineup changes you will make from the Stoke game. And yep, Dave, where else can they find you?
Yeah, Talking Walls on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and obviously YouTube. We'll have our preview out. We'll have my reaction out. And then if you want to, if Palace beat us or whatever on Saturday, you can laugh at our fans' react as well. We'll have some very angry fans on the channel as well, I'm sure.
Well, hopefully that does happen and we can go over to Talking Wolves and laugh at their fans being frustrated. But I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as that. Thank you, Dave, for having us on. And until
Pleasure,
next
man.
time, up the Palace.